the Chief Executive at Cannon Asset Managers, Dr Adrian Saville. Adrian, I mean, you must be watching this a little bit like trying to watch a horror movie on Halloween, slightly between your fingers and your fingers spread out. You can't help but watch, but you know you don't want to.
You don't want to look too closely, but it's compelling viewing. You're absolutely right. I think, John and you both flagged that there's a commonality in that the last time we saw this type of blowout was exactly a Monday morning in Japanese markets, fairly thin, and that was when the rand made its way all the way to 18 to the dollar.
So it could be worse. I mean, I saw the Financial Times journalist Joseph Cottrell earlier tweeting saying, South Africans, if you're just tuning into the Turkish crisis because of the rand's overnight drop, imagine if a country had also done a Nenegate but had just kept going. The reality is the Turks have lost, half the value of their currency in the last month.
Yeah, and I think that this is really just the start of it. So you were talking about contagion, and the contagion quickly spreads into the lending made by Spanish, Italian, French banks into Turkey in the form of UniCredit, BNP Paribas, BBVA. They've made loans into Turkey. The currency is now down 50%, and interest rates on government bonds are up at 18%. This turns a country of what were voracious borrowers in the course of 2017 suddenly into a whole bunch of bad debt. So I think the contagion from here has the capacity to spread quickly and rather fiercely.
Because what was happening in Turkey last year was that there was something of an economic boom. Turks felt very confident. They were borrowing money. A lot of companies were borrowing money, as you say, outside of Turkey. They were borrowing in foreign currency, primarily the US dollar. Growth hit 7% in Turkey last year, but it was consumer-fueled growth. And then they were playing musical chairs. There were, 20 million people playing musical chairs and only 1 million chairs. And when the music stopped, there weren't enough chairs to go around.
Yeah, I think to put the numbers into sort of practical terms is the Turkish borrowing sits at about half of the economy is represented by foreign borrowing. And now you owe those dollars back not at, if we were to use rands, you owe half of the economy not back at 14 rand to the dollar, but instead at 28 rand to the dollar. They are sitting with an extraordinary problem. They're importing a lot of inflation, so food inflation is sitting up at 20%. And through all of this, much like many other sort of strong men, Trump, Putin spring to mind, Erdogan is saying, I'm not blinking. I'm not moving interest rates. I'm not taking funding to bail us out. This really is a storm in a teacup.
And except it's not, because we've seen this movie many times before in developing markets where you are subject to the whim of the world. You're subject to the amorphous financial markets, to misquote Trevor Manuel more than 20 years ago now. But Erdogan is playing puppet master. I mean, his country's interest rate is relatively low compared to where it should be. The currency is being manipulated. Hiking interest rates would help, certainly, to try and put a stay on this, but he's ideologically opposed, by all accounts, to taking the tough economic action that is required in order to bring stability.
Yeah, I think it's, this is sort of the characteristic of the strongman behavior, where you have a strong man in a weak state, as The Economist put it in an article not too long ago. And the strong man starts to walk over institutions, the rule of law, the judiciary. South Africa's seen this movie. And the fact that South Africa has seen this movie gives us perhaps a sense of optimism about what's possible in Turkey. But for now, Erdogan is certainly in control. He's moving increasingly close to Putin. He's pushing the U.S. away. And he is on top of an economy that is, my view would be, it is in the process of collapse. And he's denying the crisis.
Okay, how does this play out for us? You say we're at the beginning of something very serious in terms of contagion. South Africa has already had that first, when you're getting sick, your throat gets sore, your nose starts to run, you know that you're going to be in bed for a week and 3 days' time. Are we at that stage?
Bruce, this happens at a time when Ramaphosa is trying to raise the 100 billion to feed that deep hole of investment that's missing in South Africa. It has to come in the form of foreign assets rather than domestic assets. We've made pronouncements about the prospect of a sovereign wealth fund over the weekend. There's the land issue, a 50 billion rand SOE bailout. So not only do we have a scratchy throat, we've been pushed out into the cold. And we don't really have the strength and the resolve, I think, to be left naked at this stage to an emerging market crisis. It really is, it has a worrying feel to it, where we've got an anemic economy, a fickle rand. You pointed out that the rand is highly traded as a proxy for emerging markets. So if Turkey blows out, I think we haven't seen the worst of the rand yet. We could see weaker. To John's point, all else given, the rand does look oversold. So, I apologize for the economist's answer, but we have to watch this really closely through those parted fingers.
My thanks to you, Dr. Adrian Saville, Chief Executive at Cannon Asset Managers.